Let's talk about Monday Night Raw from June the 22nd. So, I really don't rate this episode of Raw. It felt like filler, but they did actually do some stuff. They furthered some storylines, got some things done. It's just, well, Raw hasn't felt like much of anything. It's slightly better than SmackDown, much worse than NXT, and obviously it has absolutely nothing on AAA. It's one of the bottom four WWE shows. Well, there's only four outside of main event, but it's on the bottom half of it. SmackDown is clearly the worst show, but Raw is not much better. All right, so Obafemi, Jey Uso, they have words. Obafemi came out to say that Destiny has been with him all this time. Destiny brought him here and is still with him. He says he's going to win the King of the Ring. Who should he challenge? Should he challenge the WWE champion? There was crickets, and you could hear people sneezing and digging in their nose. And then he said, should I challenge for the World Heavyweight Championship? And the crowd erupts. This brought out Jey Uso. Jey Uso is in the ring. Obafemi told him, I'm going to cut out this, run it back. And then he ran it back anyway. And then Jey Uso, completely out of breath, completely blown up from the entrance, talked about people counting him out, how this is going to be the same as when people count him out in the Royal Rumble and the World Heavyweight Championship, etc. And this is his warning shot, Oba's warning shot. Wow! Oba said that this is my warning shot, is it? Then said that if he shoot, he better not miss because he's going to destroy him. And if he doesn't miss, he's still going to destroy him. So they're setting this thing up like, hey, Jey Uso is just a stumbling block in the way for Obafemi. There's still a lot of people who are scared. They're worried. They're clutching their pearls because of the idea that Jey Uso could possibly beat Obafemi. And it's entirely possible, but I'm pretty sure that Triple H does not have crayons in his brain. That's what you would have to have if you thought or think that Jey Uso beating Obafemi in the King of the Ring in a singles match is the right decision. You would have to have Crayola shoved firmly into your brain. But I don't think that's going to be the case. Jey Uso, man, what an interesting case this guy is. People hate this guy. It's sad because he worked extremely hard, and there was a time where people would have accepted Jey Uso as a main event guy. But I think as soon as it started to happen, it was, the internet obviously turned on him first. The crowd in the arena still haven't turned on him, but I think SummerSlam 23 pretty much killed it. Everything after that has been sort of push and rope where, we've been down this road before with Jey Uso. I really wish that we didn't have Jey Uso in this position, but using Jey Uso as a benchmark so that Oba can beat him and go on to Roman would be the best option, to be quite honest. And I don't want to hear any nonsense about Brock Lesnar showing up and costing him the match. LA Knight got into it with Jimmy Uso and Adam Pearce. He continued to talk about this bloodline conspiracy against him and that Adam Pearce is probably working alongside the bloodline. This ends up with Adam Pearce making a match between Jimmy Uso and LA Knight. Later on, the Usos were told by Jacob Fatu that Solo was coming because he went to SmackDown to go try to get Solo to return. Nobody understood why Solo was coming, but we were all pre-warned that Solo was going to be there. The following match was LA Knight versus Jimmy Uso. The crowd is chanting non sequiturs because they don't really care about this. They don't really want to see this. It doesn't really matter. They're doing football chants. Football, FUTBOL chants. A bunch of British nonsense that, apparently the kind of things that these people like. And it was very distracting. And the match was actually kind of boring. Jimmy Uso is not much. I'm not too much on the Usos as a solo act. I understand why you would go that route. I'm not saying that they should be tag teams forever and they can't do anything else. But it's pretty clear, at least to me, that there is not a whole lot of interest in Jimmy Uso as a solo act. And LA Knight won the match, but it doesn't really mean much of anything because ultimately LA Knight is trapped in a vortex of all of these various feuds. None of this stuff ever goes anywhere. And I think he even knows it. He's like a hamster on a wheel, dog. He's trying to outrun this really bad creative, but it's not working. It ain't working. So what is the end game? LA Knight fights Jimmy Uso. He fights Jey Uso. Then he fights Jacob. But I don't know. So they had Solo attack Jimmy during the match. And that was kind of a FU to Roman. Not so much about Jimmy as much as it is about Roman. So they're continuing the bloodline stuff against everybody's wishes, which, we knew that they were going to do. I guess arguing about it is kind of pointless, if you're being honest, because we already know they're not going to give up their cash cow, which is the bloodline. All right, the first tag team match, Paige and Brie Bella versus Lyra Valkyria and Bayley. This is the 500th match between these two teams. At least it feels like it. Bayley and Lyra Valkyria have been a tag team for like a year and a half. It's been a really long time coming. They've won nothing. I can't remember how many matches they actually won together as a team. That doesn't matter because Lyra Valkyria attacked Bayley after the match. So there's a couple of things here. One, the match was okay. Paige she just came back, but she feels like she's been there for 10 years. There has been nothing special about Paige. Nothing. And they refuse to let personalities bloom on this roster, which is a big, big problem because Paige is a big personality girl. And every time they tried to bring her back, they tried to lean on her personality. But this time it's just, she's a workhorse. She does the hot tag, comes in, does some stuff, hits her finish and wins. And that's kind of it. And it's like, okay, but where's the promos? Where's the angles? Where's the storylines? Like, where's the stuff that people liked about Paige? Where is that shit? Same thing with Brie Bella. Like, Brie Bella is not Kurt Angle. Like, you can't just throw them out there and work matches. Like, that's not what these people were good at. Like, that's an issue. That's a problem. Triple H is looking at these girls and being like, want to work a 12-minute match. Like, what? People are used to the other way around. These girls talking for 3 minutes and then wrestling for 2. Like people, I'm not so sure people are fully invested in them going out there working matches without having an angle, without having a promo, without having characters and motivations and storylines, etc. Come on, man. Triple H is he's dumb. He's a stupid man. Anyway, after the match, Lyra was the one who got pinned, by the way. She got pinned by a Rampage, which is a sort of DDT-esque move. After the match, Bayley tried to be supportive, saying that we're still the best. Hey, we got it. And she gave Lyra a big old hug. And then Lyra threw her into the ropes and get a nice little whiplash there. Then she stomped on some Bayley a little bit, attacked her, whiplashed her on the other side, stomped her some more, completely lost her mind. Smeared her makeup all over her face. Looney Lyra is a real thing now. So Becky Lynch was not far off. She was just ahead of the curve. Let's talk about this Lyra Valkyria heel turn because this girl was bland. All right. She was cornflakes, not frosted flakes. All right. That's how this girl was. Okay. How is that going to be any different now that she's a heel? That's what I want to know. Like, how are we going to do heel Lyra Valkyria? She's been a baby face the entire time she's been in WWE, as far as I know. Even when she's Eva Valkyrie back in NXT UK, I think they may have toyed with her being a heel over there, but she was a baby face there too, as far as I can remember. She's a good wrestler. The problem is personality. The problem is that they don't do anything to highlight her personality or to highlight an angle with her or anything. They went through all the trouble of doing this. What is the next step? And how is this going to flesh out the character of Lyra Valkyria? For starters, what is the character of Lyra Valkyria? You know, that's the most important thing. What's the character? Now, this was very subversive, of course, because they had spent months going back to like December or January, teasing that Bayley was going to be the one that's going to turn. And that Bayley was the one hearing voices and calling Lyra an idiot and calling her a dummy and all this sort of stuff, being rude and mean. And then when it came time to actually break up the team, they had Lyra attack Bayley. See, this goes to show that the company is just doing stuff. Like they clearly hit a wall with Lyra and didn't know what to do. So they decided, we're just going to turn her heel because I don't know what else to do. And the Bayley angle, we just dropped that completely, and we're just going to subvert it by, having Lyra be the one to turn. And I'm not so sure if it would have benefited Bayley to turn anyway, but I think that Lyra Valkyria has a lot of potential as a white meat babyface. It could have added some character and some personality there. Again, she did a really good job against Becky, not in promos, but in the ring. I'm not so sure that she needed to be a heel right now. I get it that you might say, well, Bayley is a legacy character. It's going to be harder to get people behind Lyra as a babyface in that angle, but you should have tried. You should have tried. You got to try. Chad Gable came out there. He apologized to the Alpha Academy. He said when he lost his mask, he lost his dignity and his self-respect, and he lost his friends. He went on a tearful apology to Otis about they've been friends for 20 years, and they were at the Olympic workouts together. He held Otis's children, or Otis held his children. I forgot which way it went. It don't matter. Then Maxine Dupree refused the apology. She said that Chad Gable is a liar. She doesn't do second chances. She said that she remembers when Chad Gable made her get down on her hands and knees and beg to spare Tozawa. She remembers all of these things. And then she said that she also remembers that Chad Gable left them high and dry. And then she said she achieved Chad Gable's dream and realized that she never needed him. And they don't need him either. So she left. And she coaxed Otis and Tozawa into leaving as well. Let me tell you this. They did another heel turn on this show. They have been teasing a heel turn for Maxine Dupree for a little bit. But usually that heel turn involves Austin Theory. Okay? I particularly did like one thing about this. I like that she said, I achieved your dream. And that was great. Because the whole reason Chad Gable went nuts and turned heel because he was chasing the Intercontinental Championship. Maxine Dupree actually did win the Intercontinental Championship. It's a female version. But she also beat I guess you could say, more legendary wrestler. Chad Gable was chasing Gunther, who at the time was still building his legacy, while Maxine Dupree beat I guess you could say, lightly washed, a slightly worn Becky Lynch. So that was great. I thought that was good. I like the continuity here where she's not going to, give him what he wants easily. I also like the part where she said that this apology is not about us, it's about you. So that kind of proves that they have an idea of where they want to go with this. The problem that I have, however, is that I don't think she needs to have Otis and Tozawa with her. I think this would have been a perfect time for her to join the Vision officially and had Austin Theory and Braun Breaker and all these guys show up, take out Tozawa, take out Otis, take out Chad Gable, and say, I don't need you guys because I have new guys. Guys who won't abandon me, who are not jealous of my success, yada, yada, yada. That would have been a whole lot better if they're going to put her with them. Now, we know WWE likes to do red herrings where they plant things for a long time only to never pay it off. But if they were going to do it, this would have been a time to do it, for sure. All right. Dragon Lee was defeated by Ethan Page. This also gave the crowd an opportunity to chant nonsense because it's not like they care about this at all. Ethan Page called the luchadors cockroaches and said that he's going to squash them. And I was like, man, I'm surprised that I didn't see any woke people talk about how dehumanizing this was for the luchadors. But it's okay. The match was fine. Dragon Lee, I really like Dragon Lee. Everybody knows that. So it is what it is. But Ethan Page winning was obviously the right decision. They did a vignette for Sol Ruka where she said that she's challenging herself and she's a thrill seeker. So they're doing the whole she's an adrenaline junkie kind of gimmick. Sol Ruka got into some trouble over the weekend at a house show where she did a springboard crossbody and ended up taking out Liv Morgan's leg. A lot of people spent the entire weekend yelling at her, and she ended up deactivating her Twitter account because she was being roasted so hard for not being ready. And she's all she knows how to do is do spots. She doesn't know how to do anything. And it was weird because if you actually look at the footage there, Liv Morgan was out of position. So it was weird because you saw all of these weirdos. This one guy, the guy from the black dude who the guy that loves AEW. What's his name? I don't know. It don't matter. I'm pretty sure once I say it, you'll realize it. He went on this really long, pretentious 4 or 5 paragraphs about how bad the PC is and how the PC talent don't learn anything. And he clearly did not watch the video. Because anybody who watched that goddamn video would have seen that clearly Liv Morgan was out of position. She was supposed to be closer to the rope than she actually got. And then, after all of that, Liv was fucking fine. She was fine. She wasn't hurt at all. She just did a really good job of selling. And she continued the match, won the fucking match, and then walked out on Raw with nothing out of place. Not a hair out of place. Nothing out of place. She was not hurt at all. So these guys spent their whole Father's Day weekend yelling at Sol Ruka about how she's a rookie and she's not ready and she needs to go back to the PC and she needs to, they need to take the belt off of her and they need to fire her. And not only was it not her fault, but Liv was not even hurt. See, this is the kind of retarded stuff that we've been having to deal with in the wrestling space for a really long time. People who clearly don't watch things, they don't understand what they're looking at, or they do watch it, they don't understand what they're looking at, or they have preloaded opinions and they just dump these opinions out. And that stuff got a whole lot of likes and opinion, and he was completely fucking wrong. Completely wrong. And that was shocking to me that you could be so loud, so wrong, and yet right so much. It's crazy. If I ever had done something like that, I just delete it. Like, I'm not even gonna hold you up. I would be shaming myself. I'd tuck my tail and run. But hey, when you got a Patreon or something like that, you got a Hawk, you might as well put out whatever effusive effluvia you got in your gullet at that point. Io Sky and Liv Morgan had a promo segment where Io Sky was like Eddie Murphy, I'm very happy to be here. Meanwhile, Liv Morgan says she's the greatest women's champion of all time, that she's better and more talented and the face of this division. Io Sky said that the crown will not fit on Liv Morgan's big head. Then they brawled a little bit before Liv powdered. Then they got into some more Judgment Day stuff. I don't care about them. But I do care that JD McDonough and Dominic Mysterio had $100,000. 100,000 of them things got taken by Danhausen, who went and bought machines and equipment or something. And then, after all of that, by the by, JD McDonough was going to try to tear the machines up and end up getting electrocuted. And in doing that, he started having a shake. So now he's got like a shaky hand. And they're just kind of doing a thing where anytime somebody touches one of Danhausen's machines, it explodes on them or some ridiculous thing like that. I don't know. They're just trying to keep Danhausen on TV. Danhausen did do a segment where he joked about wanting to run for prime minister, and I think he should rethink that, because the reason why Keir Starmer had to resign is not a good one. I don't think Danhausen, that's not a laughing matter at all, sir. What if you really know the grim details of what's been going on in the UK? No laughing matter. I know I'm smiling, but it's not a laughing matter. People are dead fucking serious about that stuff. Anyway, they did a sit-down interview with Seth Rollins, who said that his plans have not been going well, but he is going to. He thanked the Street Profits for helping him out, and that he's going to have their back tonight. Okay. Dirty Dom also wanted an apology from Chad Gable and from Adam Pearce, but he wasn't interested in wrestling Chad Gable when Chad Gable wanted to fight him. Instead, he pitched that to JD McDonough. So, oh God, we got to watch JD McDonough next week. Not happy about that. That's the worst thing about them being in Europe. Whenever they go to Europe, that's when they bring out all the small foot European guys. The Lyras, the JD McDonoughs, what's that fucking guy? Pete Dunne. I heard Pete Dunne worked an indie show and people thought he was fired because he worked an indie show. Not at all. Not at all. Triple H is holding on to that guy like grim death, and I'm not sure why. You know, he's a producer for the show now. The guy's younger than everybody else. The guy's like 27 or something like that, and he's a producer for everybody. Like, get real. Anyway, the tag team championship match. The Street Profits get their 9th championship match against Division, and they finally win. But they booked it like a bloodline finish where a bunch of fucking run-ins. So the tag team is Bron Breakker and Austin Theory. If you'd have told me 3 years ago that Bron Breakker and Austin Theory were going to be a tag team, I'd have said, well, why? For starters, both of these guys are main event guys. Why would they be in a tag team? But then, you could make the argument that maybe this is just for their development or something like that. And I said, well, they would have been a badass tag team. And they are, except Austin Theory has 0 charisma, 0 personality, and just works like a creator wrestler. This is some of the worst stuff ever. Okay, he's literally kind of like a robot. He doesn't get a chance to show any personality whatsoever. I don't know what Triple H did. We've been going through this. He put me through the ringer, bro. This is the cheese grater to the head bit, because this guy used to be something, and now he's nothing. Now nobody cares, and it's very, very sad. Same thing with Bron Breakker, to be quite honest, because Bron Breakker has probably worked more main events than any young talent in WWE, but he's probably also lost more main events than any young talent in WWE. They keep putting Bron Breakker in the main event because they recognize that he has the potential to be there, and that he probably should be there, and that he is going to be a top guy, but he keeps fucking losing. Now, I'm not saying they should have lost to the Street Profits. I think the Street Profits should have won. I think that was the right decision, especially the way that they did it. The problem is that they keep beating Bron Breakker. He just keeps fucking losing. And that's not good for his development. It's not good for Austin Theory's development, but they've given up on him. So there's nothing you can really do. The moment that Logan Paul, who I'm pretty sure Triple H was interested in pushing, was Logan Paul. And the moment that Paul Heyman disappeared, the Vision was flapping in the wind. I mean, they were pretty much done at that point, right? So Bron Breakker hit the flying clothesline on the desk, which is a very cool spot. I like that. They did the Steiner Bulldog. Only got a 2 count, but that's because Dawkins broke it up. Logan Paul was ejected for interfering in the match. He later returned with brass knuckles because getting ejected doesn't mean anything. At that point, Joe Hendry returned and chased off Logan Paul. Remember him? I forgot that guy even worked in this company. They have done nothing with Joe Hendry. I forgot he worked there. So I legitimately had a soft pop when his music played, because I was like, whoa, wait. He is still there, huh? They didn't just bench him. And a lot of people was hoping that he was benched and that there was no purpose for him, because then they could go into soliloquies about how they didn't really need him. They just signed him to hurt TNA or just to show their power over TNA or whatever. But it seemed like they really do have a plan to book Logan Paul versus Joe Hendry. And I'm not sure if that helps anybody, but it's a start when it comes to Joe Hendry, I guess. So after Joe Hendry chases off Logan Paul, the Brass Knuckles are left behind. Austin Theory tries to get the Brass Knuckles, but Seth Rollins' music plays. Brian Breaker turns to the ramp because that's idiot fucking pro wrestler 101 is that when you hear theme song, you almost immediately think, oh, they're coming from the ramp. And then they never fucking do. They always come from behind you. This time, clearly that's what happened. Seth Rollins jumps the barricade, grabs the Brass Knuckles away from Austin Theory, and then punched him in the head, leading to the finishing sequence where Montez Ford hits the big splash onto Austin Theory to win the tag team championship. The crowd was very happy with this because they got a similar finish to what they got at WrestleMania. It was a very involved finish. It tied up all the loose ends of the storylines that they've been having. It furthered the storyline with Seth Rollins and Brian Breaker. And so it was a pretty well done match. I'm a big fan of Montez Ford and Angelo Dawkins. I'm a fan of all four of these guys. But I was always just kind of frustrated in how we got here and with the vision, because they've done nothing but lose since Paul Heyman left. They have no heat, and there's seemingly nothing about them that's really intriguing or interesting right now. And I saw a clip of JD from New York, I believe it was, screaming about how the bloodline is the reason why everybody's bored with these shows, and Cody is the reason everybody's bored with the shows. And that's partially true, I think. The issue we have here is that nobody else is interesting. It's not that, oh, they're building an entire show on the bloodline. They should go look at these guys. These guys are more interesting because they have nothing. I said this during my SmackDown review. If you take away Roman and you take away Cody, what do you have? Genuinely, sit down and look at the roster and say, who do you put the belts on? They've damaged everybody that you could potentially really get into. They damaged Oba. They've damaged Jacob. They've damaged Gunther. They've damaged, Mello and Ricky Starks. And, all of these people, like, there's no Brian Breaker. They've done irreparable damage to these characters. The only thing that's keeping them afloat is the people that they haven't done irreparable damage to, which is the Bloodline and Cody Rhodes. But it gets to the point where these guys are going to have to work with each other in order to keep the shows interesting, because they keep beating everybody and nobody else can get over. But then when you look at other parts of the show, the crowds are chanting CM Punk again, or they're chanting non sequiturs. They simply don't give a fuck about who's out there or why. And a lot of that has to do with the load management of WWE these days, where they don't book everybody. So like Dominic Mysterio could be one of the most over heels on the show, but never fucking wrestles on the show and barely ever appears and literally does nothing. And then they'll send Jey Uso out there to yeet for 10 minutes. And then next thing you know, you don't have any time for anything else. And then you will have these storylines where they don't book Becky Lynch for some reason. Why is Becky Lynch not on the show? These things are questionable behaviors. It's one thing for Bianca Belair to not be on the show. She's pregnant. It's one thing for Drew McIntyre to not be on the show. He's doing some Hollywood stuff. It's another complete thing when you have CM Punk sitting at home doing nothing. It's a completely different thing when you have people that you are using, but you've buried them and kicked them in the nuts and pinned them a bunch, and nobody has any belief in them as a heel or a babyface. That's the problem with WWE. It's not the wrestlers themselves, even though sometimes they can be bad or boring in their presentation and or in their execution of what they're supposed to be doing. The problem is the company refuses to let anybody rise up. Anytime somebody looks like they could potentially rise up, they throw a veteran at them to stomp them right back down. Obafemi is one of the most over guys in the business at this point. And they are very lucky he survived losing to Brock Lesnar. But there was no reason for him to ever lose to Brock Lesnar. They just did it, And now they have a chance to make it right. But they have now scared people into thinking that Oba's not going to go over, that he's going to lose. So what does that mean? Why would you do that? Why would you scare people into thinking that Oba, can't win? But the last time we saw something like this was the New Generation era, because it was a similar thing where Shawn and Brett was beating everybody on TV, and it looked like nobody could get over it. Diesel too. They were pinning Owen Hart and Bulldog and King Kong Bundy and Yokozuna, and there was somebody else right on the tip of my tongue that I was thinking of. They was just beating them all on TV, and the pay-per-view matches were kind of struggling. Like Sid is what I was thinking of, because Shawn beat Sid in the middle of summer '95 or something like that. He did the double super kicks, one to the stomach, one to the chin, and it was like, wow, nobody means nothing outside of like three people, like Undertaker, Diesel, Shawn, and Brett. That's it. Everybody else is a fucking jabroni. And when you have that sort of mentality, it hurts your roster, it hurts the rest of the roster, because people don't really care at that point, And even Razor Ramon didn't really have a whole lot going at that time, because he lost to Shawn too at SummerSlam that year. So it was like there's no momentum for anybody. And people who probably should have momentum, who should have heat, you're beating them on TV, or you're just not booking them. One or the other. Couldn't get Bam Bam Bigelow on TV. Then they turned him heel later, babyface later, which really killed him. And then I think they had him lose to Goldust or something like that, and that really put him in the ground. So there was like a whole lot of stuff going on at that time that reminds me of what they're doing today. And it's bad booking, because you have favorite guys, and these favorite guys are the only guys that are allowed to get over. These are the only guys who are allowed to look dominant. These are the only guys who are allowed to look cool. Everybody else has to be a jabroni, or they get no promo time. They get, they may get long matches now, because they didn't get long matches then, but they get put in these boring ass matches where the crowd starts chanting non sequiturs. But they have so much more potential now, because people like LA Knight as a mid-carder gets a lot of really good pops. And Oba gets a big pops, even though he's not really a main event guy yet. And on SmackDown, Trick Williams, and he gets pretty good pops too. But he's working with people that aren't over and who have no heat, because they keep doing triple threat matches and fatal four-way matches and singles matches that are just going in circles. How many times can we see Carmelo Hayes versus Ricky Starks? How many times can we watch the Vision versus the Street Profits, or LA Knight versus a member of the Bloodline? Like, that's or the Judgment Day. It's like, fuck, come on. This stuff sucks. The interest in the product is not indicative of the guys on the show. Not these days, because the crowds are coming to the show because they're into the brand. But when you actually come to the show and you're interested in the brand, what is the brand? The brand is they come to Yeet, put their finger up, and see what the Bloodline is doing. They're not coming to see what LA Knight's doing, because they know he ain't doing shit. He ain't been doing shit for months. They're not coming to the show to see what Cody Rhodes is doing, because he doesn't do shit. He ain't been doing shit for months. So they're just coming to see the package, I guess. But I wonder how much longer that's going to last. And I guess they're paying to have their names put on the ring now. So that's another thing WWE can be very happy of. They can trick the marks into putting their names on the ring. Hey, how much you want to pay to have your name on the ring? Like, what does that mean? Why do I care about having my fucking name on the ring? Do I get the ring if my name's on it? Maybe they cut out that small part that nobody touches. There's not going to be any blood or anything like that on there. The only reason it'll be worth anything if somebody bleeds on your name. Somebody spits or, leaves some tears on it or something. Other than that, it's just your name written on a piece of cloth that you paid for, and then maybe they cut it off and give it to you. It's retarded. But WWE really tries to run people off. I don't think they've been doing the best that they can, especially when you look at AAA and NXT. But let me know what you guys think. I'll talk to you people later. Be blessed.